No backup plan, no safety net, no second chances when facing starvation in a hostile nation that criminalized poverty itself. Between 1900 and 1930, over 500,000 itinerant workers rode America's 254,000 miles of railroad track, seeking seasonal employment that could mean the difference between survival and death. These men faced railroad bulls armed with 3-foot hickory clubs weighing 2.5 pounds, temperatures that dropped to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit in unheated boxcars measuring 40 feet long by 9 feet wide, and the constant threat of being crushed by 40-ton freight cars moving at speeds up to 60 miles per hour on tracks spaced exactly 4 feet 8.5 inches apart. Railroad companies employed over 2,000 private security guards specifically to prevent hobos from riding freight trains, resulting in an estimated 6,500 hobo deaths annually during peak years. The mortality rate among freight riders was 23 times higher than among the general population, with causes of death including hypothermia, crushing injuries, falls from moving trains, and violence from railroad personnel. One man rose from these desperate ranks to build an empire on steel rails. Jeff Davis, the self-proclaimed king of the hobos, didn't just survive this brutal world. He organized it, ruled it, and transformed it into a functioning society with its own laws, economy, and system of mutual protection that saved thousands from certain death. His organizational genius created the first successful self-governing institution for homeless workers in American history, managing operations that fed over 380,000 meals annually and housed up to 1,500 men simultaneously. But how did Davis create a mobile kingdom from scattered, desperate men? What were the precise organizational techniques, financial mechanisms, and survival strategies that allowed him to rule America's rails? And what forgotten systems of hobo governance and railroad survival can teach us about building resilient communities in the face of overwhelming adversity? Today, we're exploring the incredible true story of Jeff Davis, the Hobo King, and the forgotten world he created on America's rails. My name is Sam, and this is Wild America. Part 1. The Architect of a Mobile Republic. The Grand Hall of Seattle's Labor Temple at 6th Avenue and University Street buzzed with the heated rhetoric of 500 union delegates attending the 34th Annual American Federation of Labor Convention in November 1913. Cigar smoke hung thick in the air as union bosses in wool suits debated jurisdictional disputes over the 8-hour workday and minimum wage standards. But amidst these established labor leaders sat a different kind of organizer. Jeff Davis, 30 years old, with the calloused hands of a railroad worker and the sharp eyes of a natural strategist, wasn't there to beg for a seat at the table. He was there to build his own table, his own union, and his own kingdom. Davis's first move demonstrated the calculated precision that would define his reign. Rather than delivering fiery speeches about worker solidarity, he approached the editorial board of the Seattle Union Record with a detailed business proposal. He presented a comprehensive plan for a self-managed hostel that would house, feed, and provide employment assistance for Seattle's estimated 2,000 unemployed men who were currently overwhelming the city's jail system at a cost of $1.50 per man per day. His proposal included specific financial projections. A 150-bed facility could operate on $300 per month, with residents providing their own labor for cooking, cleaning, and maintenance. He calculated that each resident working 2 days per week could generate enough labor value to sustain the entire operation while leaving 5 days free for seeking outside employment. The Union Record's editorial board, impressed by Davis's pragmatic approach and detailed planning, approved a grant of $55, equivalent to approximately $1,400 in today's currency. This wasn't charity, it was seed capital for a revolutionary experiment in worker self-governance. Davis immediately allocated $50 to secure a 1-month lease on the defunct Providence Hospital at 5th Avenue and Madison Street. The 3-story brick building had been vacant for 2 years, its 40 rooms and large common areas perfect for his vision. The remaining $5 funded the printing of 500 handbills that read, "No bums allowed. Workers only. The Hotel de Dink is now open. A home for those who toil." Simultaneously, Davis established the International Itinerant Workers Union, Local 22, giving his organization official recognition within the AFL structure. This wasn't merely a shelter, it was the embassy of a new nation, the Hobo Republic, and Davis was positioning himself as its undisputed king. The term gink itself was strategic. In Hobo slang, a gink meant a fellow worker, distinguishing the residents from bums who refused to work and tramps who worked only when forced. Davis was creating a new class identity, one based on dignity through labor rather than charity through pity. Within 72 hours of opening, the Hotel de Dink housed 150 men. Within 2 weeks, that number had grown to 400. By December 1913, Davis was managing a complex operation housing up to 1,500 men simultaneously, making it the largest self-governed institution for homeless workers in American history. Part 2. The Hotel de Dink, Engineering a Society. The main ward of the old Providence Hospital had been transformed into a precisely orchestrated social machine. The air carried the scent of carbolic soap, boiling cabbage, and wet wool, but underneath lay the unmistakable atmosphere of purposeful activity. This was no mere shelter, it was a functioning city-state with its own economy, government, and military-style organization. Every new arrival underwent a rigorous 24-hour indoctrination process designed to transform desperate individuals into productive citizens of the Dink Republic. Upon entry, a newcomer was immediately brought before the Jungle Court, a tribunal of elected crew chiefs presided over by Judge Skinny O'Mara, a former railroad conductor who had lost his left arm in a coupling accident. The first sentence was always identical: mandatory delousing and sanitation. The new resident would strip completely, his clothes sent to the blanket crew for steam cleaning in a 20-gallon copper vat, heated to exactly 212 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes to kill lice, bedbugs, and their eggs. Meanwhile, he would be scrubbed down with a coarse horsehair brush and a block of lye soap containing 12% sodium hydroxide, strong enough to remove embedded dirt and kill skin parasites, but carefully formulated to avoid chemical burns. Only after passing this sanitation process could a man become a citizen of the Dink. But citizenship came with obligations. To receive the 3 daily meals reserved for employees, he had to work. The system was precisely calibrated. A 2-day work shift earned a meal ticket good for 21 meals over the following week. The work assignments were specific and demanding. A member of the wood crew was required to split and stack exactly 1/4 cord of Douglas fir per 4-hour shift using a 6-pound splitting maul and steel wedges. The wood had to be cut to precise 16-inch lengths to fit the hotel's cooking stoves and heating furnaces. Failure to meet quota resulted in assignment to the scrubbing crew, considered the most undesirable job. The kitchen crew, supervised by Mulligan Mike, a former chef from the Great Northern Railway, followed strict menus designed to provide maximum nutrition at minimum cost. A typical employee dinner consisted of 8 ounces of pork shoulder, providing 400 calories and 28 grams of protein, 10 ounces of boiled potatoes, 220 calories and 5 grams of protein, a 4-ounce serving of cabbage, 25 calories and essential vitamin C, and 2 slices of bread, 160 calories, totaling approximately 805 calories per meal. Non-workers received only 2 meals daily: breakfast of rolled oats with a slice of bread, approximately 300 calories, and dinner of vegetable soup with bread, approximately 250 calories. This 550-calorie daily ration was sufficient to prevent starvation, but insufficient for sustained physical labor, creating powerful incentive to join the working ranks. The hotel's self-governance system operated with remarkable sophistication. The jungle cops, elected by their fellow residents, patrolled the facility armed with 18-inch hickory batons. They enforced a comprehensive code of conduct that prohibited gambling, drinking, fighting, and theft. Violations were tried before the Jungle Court, which met every evening at 7 p.m. in the main hall. Court records from December 1913 reveal the system's operation. Number 232, charged with spitting on the floor, sentenced to cleaning all cuspidors for 1 day. Number 764, a 19-year-old minor arriving dirty and in rags, sentenced to 3 days of soft mattress and 3 square meals while employment is sought. Number 605, caught playing cards in a local saloon, forbidden to Dink residents, sentenced to cleaning all windows plus 1 week additional work for disrespect to the court. The hotel's financial operations were equally sophisticated. The soliciting squad, armed with formal letters of introduction, raised donations from local businesses and wealthy residents. They collected an average of $75 per week in cash donations, plus substantial contributions of food, clothing, and supplies. This income, combined with the labor value generated by residents, made the hotel completely self-sustaining. In its second winter of operation, the Hotel de Dink served 381,975 meals and provided 159,935 beds, all without a single paid employee. The operation fed and housed more men than many small cities, operating on principles of mutual aid and collective responsibility that challenged conventional notions of charity and social welfare. Part 3. The Iron Laws of the Iron Road. A moonless night in the Chicago and Northwestern Rail Yard, winter 1925. The temperature hovers at 18 degrees Fahrenheit, and a bitter wind carries the scent of creosote and coal smoke across acres of steel track. A hobo lies flat in the gravel ballast 100 feet from the main line, his ear pressed to the cold rail. He's not listening for the locomotive's whistle, but for the specific sound that will determine whether he lives or dies in the next 5 minutes. The sound comes, a loud, percussive as air brakes release from a long line of freight cars. This signals an imminent departure, and the hobo knows he has perhaps 90 seconds before the train reaches a speed that will make boarding impossible. What follows is not a reckless leap of faith, but a calculated sequence of actions refined through decades of collective experience and paid for with the lives of countless men who got it wrong. Hopping a moving freight train was a precise science with no margin for error. The physics were unforgiving. A 40-ton boxcar moving at just 8 miles per hour carried enough momentum to crush a human body instantly. The steel wheels, each weighing 800 pounds, exerted pressure exceeding 33,000 pounds per square inch on the rails. A single misstep meant death or dismemberment. Step 1. Target selection. The ideal car was an empty gondola or boxcar with an open door on the lee side, away from the wind. Refrigerator cars were death traps. Their airtight seals could turn them into suffocation chambers. Tank cars were impossible to board safely. Flat cars offered no protection from weather or railroad bulls. Step 2. The approach. The hobo would run parallel to the track, matching the train's speed for at least 30 feet to synchronize his momentum. Running speed had to be precisely calibrated. Too slow, and he'd be dragged under the wheels. Too fast, and he'd overshoot the grab iron. Experienced hobos could judge train speed within half a mile per hour by the sound of wheels on rail joints. Step 3. The grab. The critical moment. He would reach for the steel grab iron on the side of the car, always with the hand facing the direction of travel. Grabbing with the trailing hand could cause his body to swing out and under the wheels. The grab iron, a vertical steel bar 1 inch in diameter, had to be grasped with a full hand grip, never just fingertips. Step 4. The footing. With a firm grip established, he would place his foot on the lowest rung of the side ladder, a small iron loop positioned exactly 18 inches above the track bed. This step required perfect timing. Too early, and his foot could catch on trackside obstacles. Too late, and the train's acceleration would make it impossible. Step 5. The ascent. Maintaining 3 points of contact at all times, he would climb the ladder until he could swing into the car or onto the roof. The entire process from initial grab to secure position had to be completed in less than 5 seconds. The dangers extended far beyond the boarding process. Railroad bulls, private security guards hired by the railroads, patrolled the yards with orders to keep hobos off the trains by any means necessary. Texas Slim Henderson, a notorious bull on the Southern Pacific Line, carried a 3-foot hickory club and was known to have killed at least 6 hobos during his career. Bulls were authorized to use deadly force and rarely faced prosecution for hobo deaths. Hobos developed sophisticated countermeasures. Riding the rods involved perching on the narrow truss rods beneath freight cars, a space no more than 18 inches high that offered near-complete concealment. The position was brutally uncomfortable and exposed riders to road debris kicked up by the wheels, but it was virtually invisible to bulls conducting car-by-car searches. The blind baggage technique involved riding in the narrow space between the locomotive tender and the first passenger car, where the coupling mechanism created a small platform. This position was relatively comfortable and warm from engine heat, but extremely dangerous during switching operations when cars could be coupled or uncoupled without warning. Weather presented constant threats requiring specific survival techniques. Winter temperatures in unheated boxcars could drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, causing frostbite within 30 minutes and potentially fatal hypothermia within 3 hours. Hobos carried precisely calculated cold weather gear, wool blankets weighing exactly 4 pounds. Heavier blankets were too bulky for bindle carrying, lighter ones provided insufficient insulation. Felt-lined boots with leather soles 3/8 of an inch thick. Rubber soles became dangerously slippery when wet and provided no insulation, and wool caps that could be pulled down to cover the entire face except the eyes. The most experienced hobos employed the buddy system during winter travel, pairing up to share body heat and take turns staying awake to prevent freezing during sleep. They would position themselves in the center of boxcars, away from the steel walls that conducted deadly cold, and create windbreaks using cardboard or newspapers. Emergency warming techniques included vigorous exercise every 20 minutes and the dangerous practice of building small fires in metal containers, which risked carbon monoxide poisoning in enclosed spaces. Summer brought equally lethal dangers. Steel boxcars became ovens in direct sunlight, with internal temperatures reaching 140 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-afternoon. At these temperatures, dehydration could kill within 6 hours, and heat stroke became a constant threat. Experienced hobos carried water in 2-quart military surplus canteens and knew to seek cars with ventilation slats or open doors for air circulation. They traveled primarily at night during summer months, timing their movements to avoid the deadly afternoon heat. Advanced hobos understood the physics of train-generated wind patterns, positioning themselves to maximize cooling airflow while avoiding dangerous downdrafts that could pull them from the train. They wore light-colored clothing to reflect heat and carried salt tablets to replace electrolytes lost through sweating, techniques learned from railroad workers who faced similar conditions. Part 4. The Kingdom's Twilight and Transformation. Britt, Iowa, August 1952. The annual National Hobo Convention sprawls across the town's fairgrounds, but the scene bears little resemblance to the desperate gatherings of the Depression era. Instead of campfires and bindle stiffs, the grounds are filled with the chrome and polished steel of Ford Custom lines and Chevrolet style lines. Men in pressed shirts and clean trousers set up canvas tents with military precision, their wives preparing elaborate picnic spreads on folding tables. Jeff Davis, now 69 years old and wearing a suit that would have cost a month's wages in his hobo days, surveys the transformation of his kingdom. His hair is silver, his face lined by decades of sun and wind, but his eyes retain the sharp intelligence that built an empire on steel rails. The organization that once struggled to raise $55 for a month's rent now makes a public donation of $3,000 to the Ballard Hospital, presented with ceremony to the mayor of Britt. The post-World War II economic boom had fundamentally altered the landscape that created the hobo. Between 1945 and 1960, the number of registered automobiles in the United States tripled from 25 million to 75 million. The Interstate Highway Act of 1956 authorized construction of 41,000 miles of limited-access highways, creating a new transportation network that was faster, more accessible, and infinitely safer than riding the rails. Simultaneously, the demand for seasonal migratory labor plummeted as agriculture became increasingly mechanized. The mechanical cotton picker, perfected in the late 1940s, could harvest as much cotton in one day as 50 hand pickers. Similar machines revolutionized wheat harvesting, fruit picking, and other agricultural work that had sustained the hobo economy for half a century. The very word hobo began losing its meaning, becoming conflated with tramp and bum, the very terms Davis had fought to distinguish his workers from. The careful distinctions he had established between hobos, who traveled to work, tramps, who traveled but avoided work, and bums, who neither traveled nor worked, collapsed in the public mind as the economic conditions that created these categories disappeared. Davis continued his realm tours throughout the 1950s and into the 1960s, traveling by automobile now rather than freight train, visiting the scattered remnants of his once mighty organization. He found former hobos who had become union foremen, small business owners, and respected members of their communities. The skills they had learned in the jungles, organization, mutual aid, and collective problem-solving, served them well in conventional society. The Hotel de Dink concept had evolved as well. Similar institutions appeared in cities across the country during the Great Depression, providing temporary housing and work programs for the unemployed. The model influenced New Deal programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps and Works Progress Administration, which employed millions of men on public works projects while providing housing and meals. When Davis died in 1968 at age 85, the world he had organized and ruled was already becoming legend. The last great hobo jungle, located in the Bowery district of New York City, had been cleared by urban renewal in 1965. The era of the freight-riding hobo was over, replaced by a new generation of wanderers who traveled by automobile and airplane rather than boxcar and gondola. Conclusion. Jeff Davis's empire was built not on land or gold, but on the revolutionary idea that society's most marginalized members could govern themselves with dignity and effectiveness. His Hotel de Dink proved that complex social problems could be solved through collective action and mutual aid rather than top-down charity or government intervention. The organizational principles Davis developed, democratic governance, work-based citizenship, and collective responsibility, challenged fundamental assumptions about poverty, homelessness, and social order. His success demonstrated that the poor were not inherently lazy or incompetent, but simply lacked opportunity and organization. In our current era of gig work, housing insecurity, and economic uncertainty, Davis's model offers powerful lessons. His emphasis on practical skills, mutual support, and collective problem-solving provides a blueprint for building resilient communities in the face of economic disruption. As Davis himself wrote in 1942, "The hobo does not believe that the world owes him a living, but he does believe that he is entitled to a chance to make a living. Give him that chance, and he will prove that he is as good a man as walks the earth." The Hobo King's legacy lives on in every community organization, worker cooperative, and mutual aid society that proves ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they work together with purpose and determination.